Hey everybody, this is the video that's going to be the overview for your capstone project for English 1. You probably have a capstone project in several of your classes. This is the overview, the description of what you are expected to do in English. All parts of this, and there are 2 parts, are due January 8th at the very latest. This is a hard deadline, and you should absolutely try to get it in earlier to be safe and make sure that you're keeping up with the work as we go. So the purpose of this capstone project is it is an end of the semester project. It's a writing piece, our first long-ish writing piece of the year. It should, in theory, help boost your grades, and it is a real-world task, and I'll get to that at the very end of this presentation. All right, so your tasks for this capstone project is 1, to write a narrative about the pandemic. And 2, complete one other creative task that is your choosing. So the narrative writing piece is about 75% of the overall capstone project grade. The draft for this is due right before winter break, December 18th. The draft does not have to be perfect, but it does need to be a good starting point for sure. And I will go into that in more detail as well. So this narrative, you have been writing narratives, if you've been in JCPS, for a very, very, very long time, practically since kindergarten, have you been writing stories. So this shouldn't be that hard, okay? So the standard is that students will write a narrative to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective techniques. Well-chosen details, logical sequence, vivid descriptions using sensory language, and character or narrator development. These are all things that we're experiencing right now as we read Part-Time Indian. So you're going to sort of do this on your own. So this is the rubric and what a distinguished or an A+ would look like. So I'm just going to go over the topics here: purpose and focus. So you're telling a story that makes sense. Idea development. It's not just, I went to Kroger, it was boring, I came home. You actually have depth and complexity. You structure it so it makes sense. And language and conventions, which is the things like grammar and appropriate voice and tone. Remember, we're at school, so you should be writing with academic English. All right, so the format for any narrative, as we've discussed a whole lot, is somebody wanted, but, so, then. So you're going to sort of loosely follow this idea, but the assignment is only 300 words, so you may not hit all of those really, really well, okay? So, but the somebody is going to be you, okay? Someone you know. That wanted depends on the situation of your story, whatever you happen to be writing about, but everyone's but or conflict problem is going to be the same. It is the pandemic. So how your character, which is likely you, are coping with the pandemic or whatever the situation is. And then you wrap it up with your hope for the future, maybe. This also depends on how you decide to approach this narrative. Stories look different depending on the writer. So some ideas of stuff to write about. You could write about going out and how that's different now. You could write about seeing friends. NTI, that's a very unique experience for your generation. Maybe what kind of stress the pandemic is causing your family. Maybe your Thanksgiving was extremely unique and it would be interesting to write about. Birthdays have looked different now, or maybe going to church or something along those lines. These are just some ideas. Really, you can write about anything as long as you're writing a story and following loosely the somebody wanted but so then or narrative structure, and it's loosely related to the pandemic in some way. All right, so this is what your assignment looks like. It says English 1 capstone project, and this is where you will be writing your narrative. Both your draft and your final version will be on this. So notice it says delete this and type your name. Please delete that and type your name, and then delete that the title and delete this and type your title. Okay, you may not have a title yet, so you might want to wait until the end to do this when you maybe have decided what your title will be. And then you'll start writing down here, okay? So just make sure that you're following those directions. Okay, so this is an exemplar, and believe it or not, this is almost exactly 300 words. I think it's like 299. So I'm going to read this exemplar so you can get a good idea of what is going to be expected of you. So this is COVID and Grandma's house. I used to love going to my grandma's house because it's a break from all the rules and tension that I get from my mom at home. When I walk into Grandma's house, I am greeted with a hug, a pat on my head, and she always compliments something about me. She is the sweetest old lady imaginable. Well, except when she nags my mom about my raggedy backpack or t-shirts that are a little too small. The last time we visited Grandma, we pulled into her driveway, and I spotted the brown plastic lawn chairs set out in the middle of her front yard. I knew those were for me and Mom, while Grandma would take her rocking chair on her porch. There would be no hugs this time. I sat down in the chair that didn't have a crack in it. I think I knew Mom would yell at me. "Joe," she said in her shrill voice, "sit your skinny butt in that other chair. You want me to break my tailbone when it breaks on me?" I got up and took the other chair. I felt the crack pinch my skin on the back of my thigh, missing my grandma's cozy couch. I heard the squeak of my grandma's screen door and out walked the small, frail woman. Her hair hadn't been done in a while, and she was a little hunched over. Above her American flag face mask, I could see behind her thick glasses her sad and watery eyes. She sat down. "How are y'all holding up?" she asked, all of us knowing that this is harder on her than my mom and me. My mom and I really miss my grandma, and she misses us, but we know that if we want those hugs again, we have to keep her safe. Okay, so this is a made-up exemplar. It fits the rubric perfectly. It's an experience that has to do with the pandemic. It has sensory language. It has a reflection at the end. So this is a very good example. It's not perfect, but a very good example of something that you could model your narrative off of if you choose. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, so your narrative is 75%. The part 2 is another creative task, which is 25%. And this does not have a rubric because I really want you to do whatever you want to creatively, okay? So some options here are an artwork with 100-word or less summary, and you can upload that as a JPEG or a PNG. You could do, so your art could be 2D. It could be a photo or a painting or a drawing. It could be a 3D sculpture and you take a picture of it. It could be digital and you use a drawing program or make a photo collage or maybe you have something else, but consider asking me first just in case. You could also do a video of a dance or a song or a rap or a speech or a poem as your creative task. You could also do written poetry, which would just be an easy turn-in. It's entirely up to you what creative task you end up doing, but it is important that you do it because it is worth 25%. Let me know if you have any questions about this or need some suggestions on some ideas. You will upload, so you'll notice that this is what it will look like on Google Classroom. It says English 1 Capstone Project Creative Task. So you'll have 2 different places to do this project, and you'll see it all on Google Classroom when you click the Classwork tab. All right, and then at the very end, the Fraser Kentucky History Museum is looking for submissions to their coronavirus time capsule. Okay, and they are taking online submissions from students who are writing these narratives, these entries of 300 words or less. So if you'd like to, and also the creative tasks. So at the very end of this project, if you feel confident and amazing about your project, you can submit it to the Fraser History Museum, and lots of other people will be able to see, to read your writing and view or read your creative task. You are probably wondering where you should start. And so step number 1 is, what will you write about? So I want you to take a moment right now to brainstorm and think of an anecdote, which is a short, entertaining story that we tell all the time as people who talk, that happened during the pandemic. For example, the student who wrote the exemplar could write, "I have an interesting story about visiting my grandma that I'd like to write about." So at the end of this Edpuzzle, that is what you will be asked to do, is to write a sentence very similar to this with an idea of something that you would like to write about. That's it.